Welcome BIO100. This is the clarification slides video for what I believe was week 14 of online content, where we were focusing on navigating the job market, and this was part 1 of 2. So in your next online module, you'll also be focusing on an extension of the same topic. So this week is a little bit different because, as you noticed for the last part of your online module, where normally I would have had an exit question for you, instead what I did, because of all these surrounding unique circumstances for this semester, is we did a wellness check-in instead. So I didn't explicitly ask you this week what specific questions you still had. So what I'm basing this video off of is common questions from previous semesters when I've taught this class. So I'm guessing that many of you will have the same types of questions, but if you still have questions that haven't been answered or weren't addressed through the module that you would like to ask me, please go ahead and do that. Reach out separately, and I'd of course be happy to discuss any of that with you. So one question that I received from students in the fall last semester was about sample resumes. And so this is something that unfortunately normally we would have spent some time going over in class together. And since we no longer have that this semester, what I've done is in week 15 in the planned in-class page, what I did is I posted several resume templates there, along with several really good example resumes from other Sac State students who have graduated and moved on to jobs in biology. And so those references are there for you. I know for a lot of you, you might be graduating soon or looking for internships, and so having a good resume is really important for helping you apply for those things. And so we've given you those resources. If you want to put together a resume and send it to me to take a look at, and I can give you feedback on it, I can definitely do that. Like I said, it's a really important part of applying for jobs. So if you have any questions about whether what you've included on your resume is sufficient or if you should be including other things, please go ahead. I can help you out with that. Another question that I think is a valid one is, how do you get experience when many jobs won't take people without any experience? So it's kind of a catch-22, right? And so I have a couple tips on that. First of all, like was covered in some of the online videos for this week, internships are a really good place to start. So especially if you're a little bit earlier in your career, or even if you're later too, but if you're earlier in your career and you know in the future where you want to go, so you want to be a veterinarian or you want to be a lab tech or something, early on in that process, you can look for internships, and you can actually look for those on Indeed. So you can look for internships where the expectation is that you don't have experience yet, but they'll give you experience, which can then be used and leveraged to help you get future jobs. So internships are a really good place to start. Job shadowing is another thing that I always recommend. So that's one of the main ways that I always encourage students to actually figure out if a career path that you're considering is what you really want to do. And this is actually what I did when I was an undergrad. I was pre-med for up until the very last year of my undergrad, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. Part of the reason I decided that was that I shadowed a cardiologist and I saw what her day-to-day life was like in the hospital, and she was a great mentor, but I just decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so before deciding for sure what career path I did want to take, I just shadowed a bunch of people. So I shadowed a veterinarian, I shadowed a physical therapist, and so that's the best way to see if that really is a good match for you. And in terms of where to find those opportunities, I went to undergrad at UC San Diego, and we had a pre-health and medical professions club on campus, and they had a really cool mentoring program or shadowing program where what they would do is they contacted medical professionals in the area who were willing to take on students, just to basically let students follow them around. And so that's how I was able to shadow so many people. So clubs are often a good place to start. If you or your family or you have any friends who know people in those professions, it's worth just reaching out to them to see if they would be willing to let you see what a day in their life is like. So job shadowing is something I highly, highly recommend. And I would also encourage you not to discount any experiences you get in your classes. So I think that's one of the main strengths of an education at Sac State compared to a UC, for instance, is that at Sac State, as a biology major, you take a lot of lab classes. And so that means that you have a lot of hands-on experience that can be applicable to a lab technician job, for instance. So make sure that when you're looking at jobs and looking at qualifications, you're not only thinking about this in a job setting, but also experiences you may have had in your lab classes. And then lastly, when you're doing your job filtering, make sure you're looking at entry-level positions. And when you're looking at entry-level positions, many of those types of jobs understand that you won't necessarily have a bunch of experience in that particular field already, but what they'll do is be more flexible and provide you with some on-site training. And then lastly, so I know we're in a weird situation right now and jobs are probably going to be hard to find for a while. I also know all of you are in different situations in terms of where you are in your academic career, if you're graduating at the end of this semester or you have a year or two more. But in general, I just wanted to address this timeline for looking for jobs. This is another question that students often ask. And so I would say, in general, if you're graduating in May and you want to start working basically right after you graduate, a good time to kind of get organized and start looking for jobs is the winter break before that. If you're graduating next month and you haven't done that yet, that's fine. Don't worry about it. The intent isn't to freak you out, but just for those of you who do have some time to plan ahead, this is a good general timeline to follow. And the reason why I recommend applying or starting to look for jobs and applying for things earlier rather than later is that even if you don't get jobs, you can get valuable feedback. So people might not hire you, but they might be nice enough to tell you where specifically you are lacking in your application, and you can take some steps to remedy that. It also gives yourself a little bit of a buffer. So if you do apply to things and you don't get them right away, if you start applying earlier rather than later, you have a little bit of a cushion so you're not so pressured. Just as an example, I graduated from my undergrad in June and I had a job lined up by about March. And that job that I had was a lab tech job, and basically I got that job because as an undergraduate I volunteered in a research lab. As I said before, once I decided I didn't want to be a medical doctor, I thought about pursuing marine biology, so I found a lab that was taking undergraduate volunteer independent researchers. I started working in that lab. I really liked it, and then once I graduated, he was actually able to hire me on as a lab tech. I worked as a lab tech for a year before starting my PhD. So that's all I have to say about this week's online content. And lastly, I just wanted to again plug the student evals for this class. I've sent a couple announcements about this. Some of you have already filled these out, so thank you so much for doing that. In terms of what they're used for, so often when I talk to students and ask them to fill out evaluations, no one has ever taken the time to explain to them what they're used for, and they're really important. So just to give you a bit of background, one of the things that these evaluations are used for is my own yearly evaluations. So as my current position as an assistant professor, every year I submit this big file that other people in the department and the college evaluate to determine whether they want to keep me or promote me. And automatically every year my teaching evaluations go in this file. So teaching evaluations are really important. Many people read them. They're used for my own evaluations. And then also I read them. So I read them and I use that feedback to improve in subsequent semesters. So there's always room for improvement. Each semester I'm teaching a class, tweaking things to make it better. And those tweaks are guided in large part by the feedback that you all have. And so by giving me really thoughtful feedback now, that'll help students in future semesters. So I'd really appreciate if you could take some time to fill those out for me. BIO100 is unique in that we have several different faculty putting together the online content for different weeks. And so because these evaluations, like I said, go in my yearly evaluation packet, I'm especially interested in feedback related to my own online modules. So those were things like the climate change, what else? Reading, scientific lit, and then also writing scientific results, if you needed a refresher. So I'm especially interested in feedback on those modules and my in-class instruction. Another really important note, these evaluations are 100% anonymous. I have no idea who wrote them, and I don't even get to read them until after grades have already been submitted. So there's absolutely 0% chance that anything you write will affect your grade in this course. And then for logistics, again, because of our unique situation this semester, the evaluations are being administered a little bit differently. All of your evaluations for all your courses are available through Canvas. So once you log in or click on our specific Canvas page, there's that left-hand navigation panel. So like this is your Canvas page, BIO100, say, or section 01. In this left-hand side here, they have things like grades, modules. And if you scroll down to the very bottom, that's where you'll see these course evaluations. And so if you click that link there, that will allow you to complete the evaluations for BIO100. There will be 2 of them, one for 01, which is our online lecture, and one for 02, which is our in-person lab. So again, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to provide some feedback. It'll be really useful for students in future semesters. So thank you for taking the time to do that.